Okay, let's kick things off with a simple idea. I mean, if you go out and buy the world's most advanced piano, that doesn't make you a concert pianist, right? You actually have to learn how to play the thing. So, why do we think that buying the latest, greatest technology automatically makes a business more competitive? That's what we're going to dig into today. It's a story we've all heard, right? A company drops a ton of money on some shiny new information and communication technology, ICT, and they expect this revolution in productivity. But then, months later, not much has really changed. So we're going to unpack this idea that new tech is some kind of silver bullet and figure out why that thinking often leads straight to disappointment. All right, first up, let's talk about the technology miracle myth. And listen, this is not a new thing at all. For decades, we've been stuck in this cycle of hype and then disappointment with every new wave of tech. We get all excited, convinced that this time, the tool itself is going to solve everything. I mean, just look at the history here. Back in the 60s, you had mainframes. They promised this amazing centralized control. But what we got were super rigid, inflexible systems. Then came the 80s with personal computers. The promise? Decentralization. The reality? A lot of technical chaos and, well, pretty unexpected results. And from the 90s on, you've got the internet, promising global connection, but we all know how hard it is to actually implement that well. See the pattern? Every single era promised a revolution, but the outcome was always a bit of a mess because we were obsessed with the tool, not the people who had to use it. So this whole recurring pattern is based on this one flawed idea. It's called technological determinism. It's basically the belief that the tech itself determines the outcome, like its features are somehow destined to make us successful. But that's just wrong. It completely leaves out the most important part of the whole equation, the actual people and the organization that are trying to make it work. Okay, so if the tech itself isn't the magic ingredient, what's really going on here? Well, it turns out there are these two really powerful market forces that make it almost impossible for technology, by itself, to give you a lasting edge. The first reason is, well, it's pretty simple. Imitation. I mean, think about it. Most new tech is out there on the open market. So if your company gets a little bit of an edge from some new software, what are your competitors going to do? They're just going to go out and buy the exact same thing. And just like that, poof, the playing field is level again. Any advantage you had is gone in a flash. All right, the second big force is standardization. This is all about network effects. That idea where technology gets more and more valuable the more people use it. It's a huge pressure that pushes whole industries toward using the same standards. You see it with PC hardware, you see it with file formats like a Word doc, you see it with internet protocols. Before you know it, everybody is basically using a slightly different version of the same thing. And the result of all that standardization? Well, it's pretty obvious when you think about it. Over time, the actual differences between competing technologies get so tiny that they barely even matter. That unique edge one tool might have had, it just gets worn down, totally neutralized. So much for a long-term advantage, right? Okay, so this all leads to the million-dollar question, right? If the technology is just a commodity that anyone can go out and buy, where does a real, lasting advantage actually come from? And the answer, it turns out, isn't in the tool at all. It's all about how people use the tool. And this is where we get to a really crucial idea, something a researcher named Wanda Orlikowski pointed out. We have to make a distinction between the technology as just a generic thing and what she calls technology in practice. And that's the good stuff. That's what happens when real people, in their own unique setting, get their hands on a tool and start shaping, adapting it, and creating completely new ways to work. And what she found is just fascinating. Her research showed that the very same piece of technology could lead to wildly different outcomes. You'd have some teams that just fell into inertia. They used the new tool to keep doing the same old stuff, no real change. Then you had other teams that would apply it. They'd use the tool to do their visiting tasks a little more efficiently, small improvements. But then, and this is the key, you had a few teams that used it to create fundamental change. They enabled huge shifts in strategy and unlocked these transformative gains. The tech was the same for everyone. The only difference? The users. So this creates a really critical challenge for anyone in a leadership position. You quickly realize you can't just install some new software and cross your fingers. Managing this whole process is actually it's a huge paradox. Yeah, it's a massive balancing act. On the one hand, you absolutely need that top-down planning and control. You've got to make sure the project lines up with the company's strategy and that people have the resources and training they need. But On the other hand, you have to leave room for bottom-up freedom and creativity, because that's where the real magic happens. That's where the unexpected, game-changing ideas are born. So, success isn't about having some rigid, fixed plan. It's about a dynamic process, a give and take that some call equilibration. It just means you're skillfully managing that tension between control and creativity. For instance, a manager might say, okay, everyone has to use this data format for their reports. That's the control part. But then they say, but you have total freedom to experiment with how you visualize and analyze that data. And that's the creativity. It's a constant dance back and forth. And that right there, that ability to manage this messy, complex, dynamic process, that is the real secret weapon. That is the true strategic capability we've been looking for. So just how rare is this skill? I mean, really? Well, get this. A Pete Marwick survey looked at 300 large companies, and they found that a whopping 65%, nearly 2/3, of their big IT projects are considered failures. They miss their budget, their deadline, or their performance goals. So yeah, mastering this is definitely not common. So let's break this down using a classic strategy test. First question, is the technology itself rare? Nope, anyone can buy it. But is the management skill rare? Oh yeah, absolutely. Next, is the technology valuable? Well, maybe for a little while. But is the skill valuable? You bet, sustainably. And here's the most important one. Is the tech hard to imitate? Not at all. But that management skill, the one that's all tangled up in your company's unique culture and ways of doing things, that is almost impossible for a competitor to copy. So here's the bottom line, the big takeaway. A true, sustainable competitive advantage doesn't come from what you buy, it comes from the capability you build. It's not about having the shiniest, fanciest tools, it's about being the absolute best at putting those tools to work. So the next time your team starts talking about bringing in some new technology, the most important question you can ask isn't, hey, what features does it have? The question needs to be, what is our strategy for actually mastering this thing? The real question isn't, what does this tool do? It's, what will this tool allow us to become? So ask yourself, is your organization just buying tools, or is it building a capability?